are live. Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunset Safari. For those of you joining our live stream for the first time, my name is Jamie and I have VM on camera with me this afternoon. James is out and about with Brian on camera looking for various wonderful magical things to show you. We're coming to you live from Djuma and Arathusa Game Reserves, which is in the Sabi Sands, which all falls under the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. An area famous for its wildlife conservation, one of the highest lion concentrations in the world, and the Sabi Sands in particular, of course, famed for its big cat and in particular incredible leopard sightings. And the wonderful thing about it, the fact that it is live, is that we never know what we're going to expect. VM and myself, over the last few months, have had some incredibly unexpected sightings. Wild dogs, for example, just appearing out of nowhere, or lions and leopards coming together to try and, or accidentally meeting together to try and scavenge off a kill. So you just never know where the afternoon is going to take you. Not only are we live, but we are also interactive, which means you can send through your questions or your comments on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv and let us know what your thoughts and feelings are. As you can hear, it is very, very windy out here in the Sabi Sands. It is, however, not quite taking the edge off the afternoon heat. It's 34 degrees in centigrade, which is 93 in Fahrenheit. So despite the fact that we find ourselves right at the end of summer and more into autumn, it is still very, very warm. Jim, you've got a grasshopper on your viewfinder.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to try and hold said grasshopper, but I'm going to wait until there's a patch of shade and a nicer view before I do that, in case it turns into absolute chaos trying to catch the thing. So for the moment, you'll just have to be content to know that VM has a passenger on his camera. My plan, as it stands, although as you know, plans never quite work out as you think they might, my plan for the afternoon is to do some checking of the various water holes. Now this morning, apparently, there was one Birmingham boy on Djuma, or around Sydney's Dam actually, but he has since crossed into Simbambili. And so we have to find ourselves other wonders. And a Birmingham boy, by the way, which I keep throwing these terms out without actually explaining for new viewers. Birmingham boys are a coalition of male lions. Young males that have just conducted a successful takeover of this area and have been doing some rather vigorous defending over the last few nights. Look, Treehouse Dam has buffalo. It doesn't come as a surprise in this kind of weather. Hello, buffalo. Let's go and have a look at them from the dam wall. Just so in case you were wondering what James Hendry might have planned for the afternoon, well, I'm going to let him tell you most of it himself. But for now, he's doing what James does best, which is wandering around on foot looking for the hyena den. Our lovely hyenas finally made good on the fairly ever-present threat of disappearing without a trace. We're going to have to see if we can't find their den again. That is what James is currently occupied doing. Hello, boys. Don't get up on my account, it's okay. You can stay there, you looked very comfortable. Nothing more refreshing looking than the muddy brown of Treehouse Dam. Oh, is your passenger dismounted, VM?
No, he's still there.
Is he still there? Oh, he's on the other side.
Yes, he's watching me.
He's watching the buffalo. Oh, he's watching you.
I think he wants to jump on my hat.
If he does, can I have your hat? Perfect, thank you. We pretty much consistently every single afternoon located buffalo around Treehouse Dam. These old buffalo bulls, fairly clearly distinguishable from the females, both from the obvious way. Also the thickness of the horns at the top of their skull. And then, of course, the fact that they occur if you do see a very small group of buffalo, it's unlikely to be females. They much prefer to be in these large breeding herds. And it's only when they've been chased by lions that they tend to separate off into smaller groups. For the most part, however, pretty common to see buffalo gentlemen like this wallowing in a dam in groups of 2s or 3s, up to a group of about 15, 16. And fluttering about them, the ever-present ox pickers, cleaning away any ticks or parasites that might be there. I also thought while I was here I might have a look for the rock monitor, the water monitor lizard, that Liam and myself saw here hunting frogs around Treehouse Dam. I don't see him, however, this afternoon. He seems to have vanished. Mostly, every now and again, I just see the little poke of a terrapin head sticking out. Also noticed I haven't seen any yellow-billed ox pickers for a while. I think that's just purely unlucky. It's a different breed. The one that we've got sitting on the buffalo at the moment are the red-billed ox pickers. Oh, we've got, biting flies, sorry. That one was a particularly sore one. That isn't what I was going to say. I was going to say we've got two different types of bovid-like creatures on the Sabi Sands. One is the buffalo. The other is the tallest animal on Earth, the African giraffe. And Jeannie was wondering, where have all the giraffe gone? Okay, let's see what other wonderful things we can find resting in the shade. And that is where I suspect we will find most of the animals, whether it be in the shade or wallowing in these larger dams and pans around the area.
My name is James Hendry. On camera is Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hello, James.
Brian is dressed in a very summery kind of outfit, and he seems to have painted a hedgehog.
No.
Not?
An owl.
An owl. Sorry about that. An owl on his thumb.
They do look quite similar.
An owlish thumb.
And
yes.
owls.
Yes, okay. I found this piece of wire. This was thieved by a hyena out of the camp, very clearly, placed in the bush along the same path on which I was following the drag mark. Anyway, we will keep looking. Just hoping it's not a wild dog track. No, it's a hyena track. They might just be just inside here somewhere. We'll keep an eye out. But let's, for the meantime, go to Arethusa and see what we can find there. I haven't been there since my return from leave, which was actually only 2 days ago, so that's not surprising. Hold on tight, big bump. Don't spill your drinks. Now, there were also, dwelling in this clearing, the right-hand side of your screen, some warthogs and two little sounders, or a sounder of 2 sows and 5 piglets. But I don't see them anymore now. I wonder if they have either been devoured in my absence or moved on to a different place. But this is now an ideal place for a warthog to live because there's grass and it's what we call a sodic area, so lots of sodium in the soil, very rich, good grasses. Warthogs tend to love this sort of area. Let's have a quick look at Sydney's Dam before we head to Arethusa, see if anything's coming down to drink. It is about 34 degrees Celsius. That is 93 Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken. There's more drag mark. There's an elephant there. That's a very wonderful question that I'm going to ponder as we stop at the dam here. There is an elephant there. I'm not sure where the lion went from this morning. Oh, he went into Simbambili, that's right. There is an elephant. Brian, you'll see him. Mm-hmm. Genevieve's question from New York is a lovely one, and it is, have I taken on any lessons from observing the animals out here? Have any of the animals given me something to think about and sort of apply to my own life? Genevieve, I suppose the most obvious answer, and it might be a little bit twee, is to say that, you know, an animal out here lives for the moment. It is unable to worry about the future. It's unable to worry about the past. Well, I guess in the case of an elephant, it can worry about the past if it's had a traumatic past, but I don't think they dwell too much on that, because the business of surviving every day is such and is so difficult that you can't really concentrate on anything else. And I think that's a very good lesson to have learned from the animals out here. So there is the elephant there, of course, seems to have a floppy ear. You see that, Brian? That broken cartilage. So we know him. I think he's a young bull, and he's got definitely some broken cartilage in the ear there that has resulted in him looking slightly like a basset hound. He does look a little bit like a dog, doesn't he? Let's have a look with these spanky new Justin Bieber binoculars that I've got. Yes, young bull, not in great condition. In fact, in very, very poor condition. Bones sticking out all over the place. He is coming this way, so I think we'll just wait here and look. I say he's young just because he's small, smallish. I mean, he's probably about 4.5 to 5 tons. That's 4,500 kilograms. You can multiply that by 2.2 if you want to get to the pounds. Roughly 11,000 pounds. But you can see his spine sticking out there, his hips sticking out. With these binoculars, I can see a tick under his left eye. That's not true. I'm joking. I can't really see a tick under his left eye. He's coming this way. Let's wait for him, I think. Although he'll probably stop and have another drink. But you can see there, even at this distance, the bones sticking out. So that trunk, I don't know why that cartilage would have broken, it might, you know what, it might be even neurological. It might be that there's some kind of neurological defect and the muscles have just withered or something like that in the trunk, in the ear. But he's got all kind of, he's got a sticky out belly at the back. Shame. We might have to call him Quasimodo. What do you think, Brian? Think Quasimodo's a good name for him? Not so much. Okay, so we won't call him Quasimodo. Kirsten says we've had better names. Poor fellow. And that there, where you can see him turning there, he's looking at us. Not sure what he's I mean, he's still quite a distance away. He's about, well, he's probably about 300 meters away. 1,000 feet. There's one thing this job does for you is it improves your times tables immensely because of the need to convert continuously between the imperial and metric systems. All right, he's gone behind the bush. I think we'll push on now. Okay. All right, let's head across to Jamie while we get out of this particular area. We're going to go down towards the gate and then down south. We'll go across to Jamie. She's got a bovid. I'll see you later.
I just had to stop for this particular buffalo. We've spoken so much about him. I think it was yesterday on the Sunset Safari, and I find myself drawn to him once again. I mentioned how I never in a million years thought that I would be recognizing individual buffalo by their looks when I first started working this job. But now, I mean, he is the most distinctive buffalo I have ever seen, and he is just so weird looking. I've realized that his boss, so the base of his horns, kind of looks a little bit like a brain sitting on the top of his head. And he's even more distinctive because he always reacts far more, not nervously, but just more alertly to our presence when compared to the rest of the buffalo. Yes, I'm talking about you. I mean, The buffalo on the left, now he's a normal-looking buffalo, although he does sort of look old and wise, like a Gandalf or another such character. Or that big dog in the Never-Ending Story's name I can't remember right now. Alka.
Alka or something.
Alka.
That was with D.
Alka.
Oh yes, something like that.
Something like that. But that's, can you see what I mean? He does sort of look a little bit like that. But that's a normal-looking buffalo. The one on the right, our friend on the right, is just so distinctive. He's impossible to mistake. His boss, I think, it's because his boss is so large. Brian offered up a suggestion yesterday that perhaps it was an actor from one of the Twilight movies. I'll leave it for you to work out which particular one we mean. And I can see that very clearly. Brent had his own different description, which involved a politician, not a South African politician, but a politician elsewhere. Again, I'm being careful and diplomatic about which names I mention. So again, that's up to you, which particular politician he might be referring to. Either way, he is the most distinctive buffalo, and I'm pretty sure that that thick, large boss of his, and the way that it extends, first of all, it extends quite high up, so there's plenty of impact space, and then it descends quite low towards his eyes, so he's got an additional protection that none of the other buffalo bulls have. And I do wonder whether or not it confers some kind of advantage to him in terms of clashing with other males, because at the end of the day, that is why buffalo males have these thick horn bases at the bottom. It's for fighting each other. He's got perfectly curled horns. I mean, they are beautifully symmetrical. And he's also relatively skin disease free. He doesn't really have any bald patches, or even slightly balding patches. He's a perfect uniform, dark, glossy brown. He's obviously a very healthy individual. He also, just from watching his behavior over the last 2 days, he is far less comfortable with oxpeckers than the others. I don't know. I mean, all of that is maybe just because I've been observing him so closely, because he's got such peculiar looks. But he does, either way, he does fascinate me. And the buffalo are having an amazing time in the Twin Dams Mud Wallow Spa. There's actually something I didn't notice before, but there's actually even more in the muddy parts in front of me, sort of hidden behind that leadwood bush. But yeah, there's some more buffalo there. Let us continue on. I didn't actually need to stop for more buffalo bulls, but it just sort of happened that we encountered him again. Also learned a great deal just by being able to identify that particular individual, but I've observed a great deal about the way in which buffalo bulls move around an area, because he seems to do a big loop from Twin Dams to Treehouse Dams to these pans and then back again. Just went through a bit of a shaky signal patch there, but I was just about to say that our grasshopper friend has only just left us, which is such a pity, because he showed such an attachment to Viam that I figured we would do the rest of the game drive with him. We'd even come up with a name. We were going to call him Hopscotch, and he was going to enjoy the safari alongside us, and I was going to ask for his opinion on things. Unfortunately, I think he has finally left Viam. He might be around here somewhere. I don't know where he went. Perhaps he found himself a greener tree or something. Does seem a pity. Oh, I think I'm going to go down to Milwaukee and just do a little bit of a trip through there, since it is so very pretty. Or maybe not just here. Not if we were struggling with signal so close to Twin Dams. We'll hold off on that plan. We'll try it a bit further up the road. While we continue on our way there, Genevieve actually asked James a really interesting question that I've been thinking about while we were sitting with those buffalo. So Genevieve, who's watching in New York, I thought your question was a brilliant one about whether we've ever observed anything or learned anything from animal behavior that we have then gone on to apply in our everyday lives. And it's a brilliant question. I would love to know. I think the biggest one for me is that constant observation and trying to read body language of not just animals but people as well in my immediate surroundings. That, of course, is how animals communicate. It's what we spend most of our day-to-day lives doing. Let me just go through this dip. We spend most of our working lives observing animal behavior, and I think in a way that has carried through to, or at least for my personal interaction with people as well, that I'm always very, very conscious of their body language and not just the words that they're saying. And then I thought about other things, the resilience of animals in the face of food poison or potential food poisoning, and how incredibly fragile we have become as human beings. I mean, I grew up in a city with everything very sterilized and clean, and it's only in moving to, not only, but it's especially since moving to the bush and moving out of a city and spending time in some good clean dirt.
You find us on Arethusa. I'm afraid Jamie has gone black screen. Not sure why. She's probably approaching Buffelshoek Dam, and Wendy, for some reason, doesn't like Buffelshoek Dam. Trying to hear what is going on with the radio on this side of the reserve. Not very easy, but we will keep you posted as the afternoon progresses. At the moment, doesn't seem to be much going on. But it is beautiful to be on the northern boundary of Arethusa, southern boundary of Simbambili, and mainly because the last time I was here, it looked like the Sahel Desert. And now it looks like the green valleys of Wales. Hello, Christy. Nice question about the boundaries. You say, why are there boundaries? Surely we just share the land between each other. Well, Christy, no, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be how it is. And that's largely because human beings, of course, are very, what's the word, Brian? They're very keen to own things. And of course, once you own property, then you don't want somebody else on your property, and then they in turn don't want you on their property, and you have this complicated arrangement where people don't want each other on each other's properties, and then they go through complex arrangements of negotiating traversing rights depending on how big their properties are. And so that's basically what's happened here in the Sabi Sands, where there are hundreds, literally, of different individual landowners, some of whom, of course, have extremely strained political relationships with each other, others of whom are very friendly and they have very kind of gentlemen's agreements over their traversing. It's all so complicated. Wild Earth tends to keep its nose very clear of any of that stuff. But basically, because it's not government land and it's broken up into very small pockets of land, all privately owned, that's why there are boundaries we're not allowed to cross, but the animals can. The other reason, of course, and it's quite simple for Wild Earth, is that we can't go everywhere. Even if everybody said, you're welcome to drive anywhere you want, we couldn't do that. Look at this glorious mud. Brian, is it not glorious? We couldn't go anywhere we want because, of course, the broadcast range of our vehicles and the towers that we have is limited to a certain extent. And while we could certainly cover the Sabi Sands and broadcast equipment, we don't have the infrastructure at the moment to do that. There is some glorious, smelly, delicious mud. If I was a warthog, I would be lying down in this mud right now, given the heat. On we go. Now, hello, Lady Macbeth. Your question dovetails very nicely with the last one about private property. And you want to know about controlled burning, and is there controlled burning in the Sabi Sands? Well, yes, there is. But because each landowner thinks that he's a bit of a conservation expert, and in some cases they are, in some cases they aren't, and because there is such an enormous variation in what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do, what you find is that the burning regimes on the different properties are very different. So some people don't burn at all, some people burn once a year, and it's all very difficult to kind of maintain a one big picture in the Sabi Sands. Whether you should or shouldn't burn, I think there's definitely a very strong case for it every so often, and some people certainly burn. And where I used to work down in the south of the reserve, where the properties are quite a lot bigger than they are up north here, we definitely did burn quite extensively. But so the natural situation would have been where it would be like this at this time of the year. Then over the course of the winter, the grass will dry out, and then by the time September, October came along, you get lightning strikes with the first storms that came through. And those lightning strikes may or may not create a fire. I'll carry on with the story just now. Let's go quickly across to Jamie with the Nyala.
We've just come across a group of barking impala, alarm calling straight into the drainage line. All right, everybody keep your ears or your eyes peeled. They've seen something, and it's probably a leopard. Looking down in here. Let's just stop for one moment and just listen again. They were looking right where we're looking. Now, this is one of Karula's favorite spots. Where is this leopard? Almost inevitably, a barking Inyala is barking at a leopard. Unless it's a lion, which could also be a factor or a possibility. In this drainage line, I'm going to go a little bit up the drainage line, see if we can't look back. If I can't see anything, I might need to go for a little bit of a stroll, just to double check. They were looking exactly in where I've stopped here, but that doesn't mean that the leopard hasn't moved away. They came up out of the male came up out of the drainage line, and they were giving that boo, boo sound that Inyala do when they're alarmed. Let's just go poke our nose. There is an easy route in here. Let's go poke our nose in here. It's the wonderful thing about leopards in the afternoons is that they do move about far more than the other big cats. Everybody keep looking, particularly since the leopard was spotted. We're looking for that flick of a white tail. The underside of the leopard's tail is the part that shows through the most clearly, even though they are very, very cryptically colored. All right, I'm going to need to just take a walk in this drainage line, see if I can't figure out exactly where this animal has gone. We came around at exactly the right moment because they just started alarm calling. So I'm going to get off on foot quickly, go and have a look. While I do that, I'm going to send you back over to James.
I'm just trying to identify what those things are, everybody. They're enormous, sort of about an inch long each, bugs. And I don't know exactly what they are. I'm just paging through the book now, trying to find them. I think it's called a frog. I think they're frog hoppers or hoppers of some kind, although they look a bit large, but they are of that sort of shape. Look at that. Maybe they're beetles. Oh, that's another mating pair. This is unbelievable. And let me just keep looking quickly and see if I can't find them. I don't recognize them from the book, and I have looked through it very often. The way they were flying there made them look a little bit like beetles, rather than. Oh, there it is. Ha! Exactly. It's a giant jewel beetle. Did you see the way they were flying there? The elytra, which are those things that are sticking out there, are sort of front wings have been modified into a shell. That's what made me think that they were beetles then. This is brilliant. Adults clumsy flyers, it says. Well, I mean, when they're carrying one another, I suppose they must be. Brian, that is spectacular work. That is so awesome. So here you go. That's what they are. A giant jewel beetle. Brilliant. Adults clumsy flyers, it says, often seen around the flowers of acacia, which that's a knob thorn, and female lays very large eggs in soil or simply drops them on the ground. The giant jewel beetle. That is absolutely brilliant. Marvelous. Well done. Good job, Brian. Thank you for tracking those. Highly skilled. Of course, most of you will now feel nauseous, but that's okay. You managed to see a giant jewel beetle in flight. Now, just up ahead, I'm reliably informed by Cedric there are some elephants. Oh, I wouldn't mind catching one of those. I've got to tell you, if it comes anywhere near me, I think I will catch it. No. Very cool. You think it's going to come, Brian?
Maybe.
If it lands within reach, I'm going to try and catch it. No. I'll just rip my hands to shreds if I try and catch it in that tree. Very, very nice to see that. A giant jewel beetle. There's another one. Cindy, in North Carolina, you want to know if we get caterpillars? Sorry, I just want to see if this thing lands, because I think if we can get it close, it'll be really impressive. I think it's gone. You want to know if we get web-making caterpillars like you do in the autumn there. Cindy, I'm not sure which ones you get there. We certainly get some, not web-building, but certainly silk-producing caterpillars out here. And I'm just trying to think of an obvious one. I think most of them produce some kind of silk, and certainly, but nothing that builds a very obvious web. Most obvious sort of home-building caterpillar we have out here is something called a bagworm, which makes itself a nest of sticks. We had one in camp the other day, actually. Yes, in elephants, just up ahead. Two little ones over there, just throwing dust on themselves and showing how tough they are. Beautiful. So we're now quite deep into Arethusa, and so while the elephants do move around a lot, at the moment we've been seeing fairly regular groups. We have been seeing fairly regular groups on. Just going to move my microphone slightly. Seeing fairly regular groups on Juma, and that female with the third missing from the bottom of her trunk is a good example. Those three young bulls are a good example. And so, whether or not I've seen these before, I'm not sure. Let's move a little bit forward. Just sneak slowly off-road here. Have a very quick look. I don't want to disturb the sighting that the guests are having over there. These elephants don't seem to be that fond of cars. There we go. There's one big cow with them. Very large cow just over the top of my head there. But I'm not going to go chasing them through there. It is quite thick in here. There you can see the ears flapping, which of course is very important for heat control in the temperatures that we're having at the moment. And what that does, of course, is it allows that cooled blood to flow into the most important organ in the body, the one organ that you cannot possibly afford to let get too hot. And that, of course, Brian, is the...
brain.
Correct. Well done. The brain. If your brain gets too hot, everything else goes kawula. Whereas if your liver gets too hot, it will recover and everything else will recover. And she is talking to those little ones. You can just hear her going, oh. I just love the colour that the grey makes, juxtaposed with the green. Hello, Wolfgang. You have described your current question or inquiry as a stupid one, and I don't think it is stupid at all. You want to know if there are more male elephants than female ones. No, I don't think there are at all. I think it's probably pretty much a 50-50 ratio. If anything, it would be skewed towards the females, because the males, of course, have to go off on their own and therefore would be slightly more at risk than the females, not hugely more, because by the time they do go off on their own, they are between 17 and 20 years old, and they're enormous. But certainly, I would imagine the sex ratio is pretty much 50-50. And you can see them loving the grass, just eating and eating and eating this fresh greenery. None of them seem to be picking leaves off the trees or eating the bark like they were 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that's as it should be for this time of year. You might also be able to hear that wonderful slapping sound of the ears coming back onto the body, also slapping off flies that are bugging the elephant. I don't think we should spend too long around here. I think we'll carry on, simply because they are going into some quite thick stuff. Marvellous, thank you very much. I'll head there. Cedric's just telling me that there is another herd of elephants not too far from here, so I think we'll go there. And while we do that, let's go and get an update from Jamie and her tracking.
Well, that was relatively unsuccessful on my behalf. Unfortunately, I'm not quite sure what was going on with those Nyala. I did find a bushbuck. Now, I have never known, ever before, an Inyala to give me a false alarm call. But maybe, just maybe, they got confused with the sight of the bushbuck. I know personally I've made the mistake of thinking a bushbuck was a leopard. Is it still here or is it gone now? Where is it gone? This bushbuck watched me walk all through the drainage line, so I was hoping I'd be able to show it to you. But now, it's disappeared. Oh well. I'm still not entirely convinced, however. I've never experienced a false alarm call from Inyala. I walked down, I couldn't find any tracks. Checked the whole of this drainage line area and up onto the other side, sort of thinking maybe if the Inyala had seen above and looked down onto the leopard or across onto the leopard. Still, no sign of any leopard, no tracks in the soft sand either. And I reverse tracked so where the Inyala came from. I walked their path backwards through that drainage line. But I'm not giving up just yet. I'm going to go around to the other side and check from Inyala Road south. See if there isn't any evidence of a leopard coming along in that direction. And then at least we can decide whether or not the Nyala were crying wolf, or at least crying leopard in this case, or whether they did actually see something. Might even just have been a leopard on a mission. We've seen how fast Karula can walk when she wants to. Might have been that the leopard gave itself away because it was just walking in a very straight, direct line somewhere. So by the time I got off the vehicle and on foot in the drainage line, it had moved off. But that, even leopards, no matter how sneaky they are, leopards, their feet have to leave tracks in the sand at some point. That being said, this is one of the hardest areas to track something, this particular road. It's very, very rocky. It's made up of a whole load of small rocks rather than sand. And it's almost impossible to track an elephant on that kind of substrate, let alone something as light-footed as a leopard. Let's go check around the other side, see if we can't spot something from there. Not giving up just yet. Me back on the subject of not giving up and tracking leopards, and the Inyala alarm calls. That does bring me back to the question that I was answering about things I've learned from animals that I've carried through into my everyday life. And most importantly, as a safari guide, I would say that that level of observation, of watching and listening for any sound, anything out of the ordinary in the bush, is something that I try to implement anywhere I am. And it's actually something that I have difficulty turning off whenever I go to a city. You're so constantly aware of the sounds around you when you live out here. And they play such an important role in your day-to-day life. And this is what happens when you start focusing too hard on leopards. I'm pretty sure I've seen a leopard rock. I don't see it anymore though. No, it's my imagination playing tricks. You never know. Stranger things have happened. Michelle in New Jersey, you are correct. We do know that Karula, of course, is capable of flying and not leaving any footprints anywhere when she wants to, or at least that is the impression that she gives off to us. She does seem to be able to take off into the sky, especially when crossing roads. You can drive down a road at slower than walking speed, looking for that cat's tracks when you know she's walking in that direction. And if she doesn't choose to walk along that road, you won't find where she's crossed. She's so capable of ducking across quickly. The one thing I was careful to do, as unlikely as it is, I think that Karula is still denning to the south of us, but I was exceptionally careful in walking through that drainage line. So there's always, once you lose track of where a leopard's den is, you never know where it is. And although I don't think she would have moved it this far in one go, and I think that she's still on Little Gowrie, so the property to the south of us, I definitely wasn't going to take that for granted. So I very much kept my distance from some of the thicker, more covered areas in there. Somewhat for my sake, but mostly for hers. I don't think she'd be terribly impressed to find me there. But as I said, I do. I know that many of you, just as we are incredibly excited to be seeing Karula's cubs. And of course, she's got to very kindly bring them back north across our southern boundary so that we can have a look at them. But most importantly, I think that we can really start getting excited now because they are getting to that age where they're going to be moving out and about a little bit more with mom. And that prospect is something that is, I know I personally am beyond excited to see them. I had one very brief, very accidental glance at her once on Gowrie Main on the southern boundary, between game drive times and her new cubs. That was back when she was denning in that little culvert on a main road, on a main access road. So I did see her very briefly then. And what a brief little sort of ball of fluff I saw made me exceptionally excited. And then, of course, not only do we have the prospect of Karula's cubs, but we also have the prospect of Shadow's cubs when she decides to, or when they're old enough to be brought out into the big wide world out there. Something that we're all very much looking forward to. And we are so fortunate because then, of course, it's not just Karula's cubs and Shadow's cubs. There's also the prospect of the 2 Styx cubs as well, or at least the Styx cubs. We don't know exactly how many she's had. We know where she's denning. They did find her den site. That den site is now closed to other vehicles, so there's no game drive vehicles allowed to follow her in there. But she's also got brand new cubs for us to look forward to. I'm just trying to cover this bit of ground quickly to get across to Nyala Road South, which is the road that runs on the other side of the drainage line that I just walked in. And there's lion tracks in this road, but I think these are old. These must have been from this morning. These are even older than this morning. These are from 2 days ago. I can tell just by looking at the track where it's lost the clarity of its edges. You can only really see 1 or 2 tracks at a time. And that's when you really get the idea of just how old it really is. We've had some extraordinarily good luck with leopards and lion sightings recently. Leopard, of course, being the more retiring of the 2 and the harder for us to find. Although I'd say we've done relatively well over the last few days. But Matt was wondering, why are leopards and lions so common? Matt is watching all the way in Nashville. Why are they so common, and why don't we see, for example, more of the other types of cats, for example, cheetah? And Matt, the reason behind that is, first of all, leopards and lions in general are more common than cheetah. Their numbers are higher. And second, and most importantly, in this particular area that we are in, this environment is not the perfect, it's not really the best ecosystem for cheetah. And that, combined with the fact that there are this many or that many lions and that many leopards, the cheetah are actually outcompeted. So cheetah fall right at the bottom of the big predator hierarchy, right below lions, hyenas, wild dogs, leopards. They're right at the bottom of that group. As such, they are often outcompeted and bullied and quite often killed, especially by lions, in areas where those animals are in high density. So they try and avoid them and move about the outskirts. That being said, when we do start to traverse on cheetah plains, which is another really, really exciting prospect, having discussed the cubs, now we've got the possibility of extra traverse area and a new place to go and explore. The cheetah plains has got big gabbro clearings of just grassland, and sort of grassland mixed with a couple of shrubs every now and again, so that a cheetah can sneak up to its prey and yet still have the open spaces to utilize that incredible adaptation and specialization they have in terms of speed. So Matt, we should be seeing, fingers crossed, we should be seeing more cheetah very, very soon. Maybe even to the point that we'll be able to start to really get an idea of their different characters. And Jack, on Twitter, you've mentioned that I forgot about Inkanyeni and who took her 2 cubs on cheetah plains. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I've been thinking Karula and Shadow. But yes, Inkanyeni, once we do get to cheetah plains, and her cubs are a little bit older, quite a lot older actually. They're close to 4 months old now. they will be a really exciting prospect as well. And Brent, as far as I know, Brent's the only one of us, personally as guides, who has seen them. And he said they are wonderfully relaxed little things. They've just, at this point, opened up sightings of them in appropriate situations to 2 vehicles as opposed to just 1. So by the time we get there, we will be able to see them. That's also something incredibly exciting on the list. As we continue a little way along here, we should come out almost exactly opposite to where I went in walking to that drainage line. And again, checking really carefully for tracks in the sand, and as well as down.
Buffalo, everybody, a breeding herd of buffalo grazing through the verdant lands of Arethusa. And just behind them there's a herd of elephants, but we can't see them at the moment. We have been told that they're around here. And they are just loving this new grass. You can see a couple of calves, cows, and the bulls. There will be bulls within the herd, but not the big old chaps that we see normally, especially around the Djuma Pan. So we haven't come too far from where we saw the giant jewel bug and then the elephants. And we'll stick around here for a while and see if we can't find the elephants as well. There they come, Brian. You won't see them yet, they're just behind this bush. The elephants are coming north. Can you see them there? Brian's got them, obviously, behind this genius. There they are. And isn't the colour just wonderful? Sun slowly starting to soften the light as it sets off to the west there. Couldn't really ask for a better Saturday afternoon, I've got to tell you. I'm just going to sneak forward a bit. I am speaking more quietly when we're around the other vehicles because I don't really feel that they should be subjected to my loud voice. So if you can't hear me, let me know, and I shall speak more clearly and crisply. Now, what is interesting here, Brian, do you notice how these cows are not in as good a shape, I don't think, as the bulls we saw this morning? Their hips are showing, their ribs are showing, and that's probably because they have to spend more time moving around than the bulls do. The bulls just go from water point into the grass, then they eat a bit, and then they go back to the water and chew their cud. But if you're in a big herd like this, you've got to move, because obviously you denude an area of grazing very quickly. So although they're looking better than they did when we went on leave, I must confess that I don't think they're looking particularly wonderful. Just a bit ribby, you can see there, a bit hippie. And of course, for the females, well, this is pretty obvious, as you can see there, just behind this cow is a little baby, just behind that bush. There's a calf and playing around, and of course, so the nutritional demands on a cow, there it is. And the nutritional demands, as you can see there, far higher on a cow than they're ever going to be on a bull. That's new. That's a very new calf, probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks old. Isn't that sweet? That's very sweet. And just in front of us now, Brian, is coming an elephant. Looks like a cow. And Brian's just going to turn on the VR rig. And of course, the buffalo are a little bit nervous of the elephant, so they're moving out of the way quite quickly. Now, she is definitely looking at us, but now she's moving off. There's a youngster behind. There is a whole herd coming through here. You just speak relatively quietly. Beautiful. Just really stunning to see them all together like this. There you can hear them calling now. So a small herd. I'm not sure, they told me it was an enormous herd, but it's not a very enormous herd at all. Let me just move out the way for these people. Ah, yeah. Good, how are you? All right, so let's quickly go across to Jamie. She's got something really fun to show you.
Linking. We have one very warm Natal spurfowl or Franklin, and I think that's what she's trying to do here, is cool down. We've been walking all the way along the road, dust bathing, or what looks like dust bathing, but not proper dust bathing, and then scratching about in the dirt. But look how she's panting, or he's panting. That really rapid movement of the throat, and the mouth wide open. This is a very hot bird. I actually almost even considered the possibility that this is a bird looking to lay some eggs. Just by that, you see what I mean about these strange actions? Because she digs into the soil, but isn't pulling anything up. So it's not like it's digging for seeds or for food. And not really throwing the dust over the shoulders or the wings in the way that a normal dust bathing bird might usually do. Which sort of is what made me think possibly trying to cool down, or even consider the possibility of looking for a spot to lay it. Oh, there we go. Maybe it was just a dust bath. You see the clouds of dust that just went out of her feathers. Actually, it's probably his feathers. I need to look at the spur on the back of the legs to be able to tell you. If it's particularly pronounced, then it's a male. If it's not so pronounced, then it's a female. Here we go. Process being repeated, or are we done now? It looks like a male. Just looking at the spur that I can see there. See that rapid movement of the throat there. Here we go again. Scratch, scratch. It's always beak first, and then scratching with the feet, and then it rests its body down on the dirt. Oh, quick preen. Amazing how this whole process has repeated since I first spotted it, all the way up the road until now. I mean, I guess it is a dust bath, but it's just maybe a little bit more of a lazy dust bath, because he hasn't bothered to fling the dirt over his shoulders. All right, are you done now, Mr. Spurfowl? It's now time to go off in search of grass seeds and other variants. There's one other possibility, and that might be that the spurfowl was picking up tiny, or searching for tiny little rocks to swallow. It's one of the ways that birds, because they don't have teeth, obviously, so they can't chew. So it's one of the ways that they're adapted to compensate for the lack of teeth. And that's to swallow a couple of tiny little round stones that then sit in the bottom of the stomach. And in that process, the powerful muscles of the stomach contract around food, comparatively or proportionately much, much stronger than our stomach muscles. And that essentially masticates, or chews, the food within the stomach rather than within the beak itself. So that might be what that Franklin was doing, but what I think we should do, after we've had all of that advice from Mr. Renius, our great tracking master and trainer, I think perhaps we should go and have a look at the tracks that this bird left. Will you be able to get from there, Vian?
Oh.
And a little bit, I mean, that patch there where it's scratched a little bit higher, or is that a bit too... There we go. There we go. That's what the track in the sand looks like, where a spur fowl has scratched about. There's a little bit there, and there's a little bit higher up as we go. If we go a little bit higher, you can see the claw marks. Oh, sorry, didn't take my foot off the brake. You can see all the claw marks and scratch marks and scuffles. So, there you go. For those of you who are fortunate enough to be watching this afternoon, you will never be bamboozled if I ever stop to ask you about a track that looks like that. And there goes the Franklin's feet. You're tracking him beautifully on the camera. And there you have it. 3 toes of roughly about, or a track about 6 centimeters in length, 2 inches in length. You're going to all be building up your track scrapbook that we've been speaking about on the last few drives. Different screenshots of different types of tracks. And tracking is not just about the leopards and the lions, it's about the little things like that as well. We had a question about, in sort of explanation as to what that bird might have been doing. And Rebecca has suggested that perhaps it was to do with a process known as anting. Now, anting is where, for those of you unfamiliar with birds, anting is where a bird settles down over an ant's nest and lets the ants crawl all over it in order to rid it of, and they will actually go and they'll clean the mites and the parasites off the bird's feathers. The other thing that happens in that whole process is ants often will release, or certain species of ants will release a formic acid that will also help to almost fumigate the bird's feathers and the way the bird's sort of the spines along the feathers and keep them clean and free from parasites. And for a bird, with its feathers and its wings being such a crucial part of the way that it moves and the way that it flies, that is, keeping those feathers clean and pristine and in good order is such an essential part of its day-to-day business. One last really careful check for any leopard tracks on this corner, because when they do enter the drainage line, it's usually around these pans and these puddles. There's a lot of game paths here that I've tracked leopard down before. So Rebecca, the reason I don't think it was anting, although that was an exceptionally good guess, is just because I couldn't see any ant's nest anywhere along there, or ant paths. And in fact, I couldn't see any trails of ants either, or bits of sand that had been dug up from underground. So whilst it was a very good explanation, I don't think in this particular case that is what was happening. To witness, nevertheless. And dust bath does actually, in a way, work in a similar way to anting itself, in that they're throwing the textured dirt over them, and it gets into the gaps within the feathers themselves, and sort of, once they've shaken that out, it catches trapped tiny little pepper ticks and tiny little mites, and fleas even, that would be sitting on the bird's feathers. Continue with my original plan, since there's no sign of any leopards walking here at all, and I feel deeply, deeply betrayed by those Nyala. I'm going to continue on to Buffelshoek Dam instead. In the meantime, let's find out what James's plans are.
I'm afraid those elephants disappeared, but there are apparently reports of others all over Arethusa, and we're not too far now from the Arethusa Dam, which is good news. Tracks of hyena here, evidence of elephants, of course. This piece of branch was picked off and broken by an elephant at some stage during the day. It's even scraped some of the bark. You see that, Brian? Astonishing stuff. All right, let's carry on before the excitement becomes too overwhelming for us. Well done, Brian. Stout fellow. So we're going to have a look at the water at Arethusa. I haven't seen any since the rain. Interesting question from Kathy here. So many of you would have seen the Safari Live story that we put out on that elephant with a hole in its ear that initially caused trouble with Scott, then it caused a bit of trouble with me. Jamie's had some trouble with him, and then Brent very nicely rounded off the story by sort of having an experience with him. And Kathy, you want to know, once he's crossed that line where he becomes sort of the line basically is where an animal starts to interact with you rather than just carry on with its life around you. And that elephant has crossed that line. You want to know, will he ever be taught not to cross the line? I think to a large extent, we saw him yesterday and he didn't cross the line again. He sort of kept to himself. And I think to a large extent, there's an impala, which is now running away. But Kathy, to a large extent, yes, it is possible. I think if he learns that vehicles are not going to tolerate him. Certainly, Brent banged on the door once or twice and he went away. I reversed at him once or twice and he went away. So I think once he learns that that's going to be the case and that we won't really tolerate it, yeah, I hope that he will learn the lesson. The other thing, though, is that I think he was coming into must, and he's certainly in full-blown must now. We did see him yesterday dripping profusely between his legs, which is of course the clearest sign of must. And so when he initially touched Scott's vehicle, it's quite possible that what was happening was that he was going into must, that he was in a sort of proto-must, if you like, and that could well have been the reason that he did that. His approach to Tara Piri, which was last year, is a little bit more interesting, but it's also not unusual because elephants do investigate women, especially if they happen to be menstruating. Elephants are renowned for being able to sense that, and they will approach women if that is the case. So that's quite interesting. Nice question that. Thank you, Kathy. Let's get up towards the dam now. See what we can find there. Not much going on. I will tell you though that Shadow has been found. Cubs are okay on the main road. Unfortunately, we're not going to view those cubs before they're 2 months old, so we've got another 4 weeks to wait before we view them. But I think if we see Karula's cubs, we would definitely have a look at them. Regardless, we're going to have some very nice cub action fairly soon. So Debbie, your question, you're in Vancouver, and it's a very good question, is if, 2 months old, would Karula start moving with the cubs? That's precisely why, Debbie, we would be prepared to view them at 2 months old. She will normally move a little bit with them. They will also be able to climb trees, and so that will help them to get away from any predators that might come near them. And that's why 2 months is a nice, safe age at which to be viewing them. Right, we are now at the water, where there are only impala and a waterbuck. The waterbuck is going to have dinner at Arathusa today, I see that. We will go along this way, actually. Somebody waving at me from the pool. Right. Nora, you're on Twitter and you want to know the difference between Arathusa and Vuyatela lodges and how far away they are. Let me just stop over here. The distance between the two is only, actually, as the crow flies, probably about, about 3 miles? So not very far, maybe 4 miles, not far at all. Vuyatela, of course, is what we call self-catering, in that they don't, they don't provide food for you. You've got to bring that in or order it in advance. But Arathusa is different from that. So there you can see Arathusa Lodge, and there's a waterbuck there, some impala lurking around on the island. And this, this dam hasn't filled up a great deal, I don't think, since the rain. I'm sure there's a bit more water in it, but not a huge amount. And that delightful sound is the sound of frolicking children in the Arethusa pool. I think they belong to the manager. Wonderful place to grow up, of course, the bush. Anyway, let's move on from here. And butterflies all over. You can see as we're driving along here all the different flowers that are producing or exciting all of the butterflies. And Paul Rizzo, you want to know if we can go to the Arethusa airstrip? Absolutely, we are on our way there now. Beautiful monarch butterflies, there's green, sort of mint green vagrants, or migrants, sorry. This is interesting. Just quickly, this young male here, who was relieving himself on the midden there, you see that, Brian? On a midden just behind. And impala will often do this. They go to the loo on the same spot. You can hear them. Right, on we go. So now we're going into the slightly thicker bush that lines the drainage line that feeds Arethusa Dam. And then we will head towards the airstrip. No sign of those two mating leopards, which is a bit sad. Brian, on the road is a little squirrel. You see him there. Isn't that sweet? Squirrel standing up and looking. So sweet. And that is the African tree squirrel. Just enjoying the last rays of the sun. Interesting question from Tony here about the leopards. And we were talking about leopards earlier, and Tony, you're in Holland and you want to know about the new leopard, Gijima, who's a bit nervous, and Brent was doing some wonderful stuff, habituating him the other day. And you want to know if he would be able to challenge at this stage for a territory, or is he too young, or would he be able to hang around and then challenge for a territory? As far as I know, there's a bit of controversy over his age at the moment. He looks to me like about a 5-year-old leopard, which means that he is going to be slightly too young at this stage to take a territory. In a year or two, he will be big enough, and I think that it's worth his while hanging around precisely where he is, simply because Mvula is not a youngster anymore, and he is kind of in Mvula's territory. Oh, what I think I saw through there. Bless you, Brian. Bless you, Brian. Blessings. And therefore probably quite a good idea for him to hang around precisely where he is. So in 2 years' time or so, he may well be able to challenge Mvula for his territory. But we'll see. These things so seldom play out the way we think they are going to. Mvula might have another 2 or 3 years in him. That's a very good inquiry. And of course, we don't really know where Gijima's come from. We're not sure what his ancestry is. Brent also very cleverly collected some of his scat the other day, so we'll send that in for DNA analysis. And with any luck, that Panthera data will come out fairly soon, and we'll be able to tell exactly who's related to who. The males, of course, will often come from outside the area, and that's really good for the genetic, sort of the depth of the genetic pool, if you like. And so hopefully he has come from away from the area and isn't related to Mvula or Gijima, at least Mvula or Tingana. And likewise, while we don't really want Kunuma and Quarantine to have to go somewhere else, because they are great fun to watch, it will probably be a very good thing if they did go somewhere else, because that would then increase the genetic pool wherever they happen to go. Right, we're now approaching the Arathusa International Airstrip, where there seems to be quite a conflagration of aircraft, 2 at least. It's like Heathrow. Let's go around the corner here. And Jenny, Debbie in Vancouver, you reckon that we should be looking for jackals on the airstrip? It would be wonderful to see some jackals. Just so few of them in the Sabi Sands here. I'm not really sure why. There's a whole lot of squirrel activity here in this tree. Look, 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 look. Look at them there. 2. Look at that. I think that's just friendly. Isn't that fantastic? And you did see those jackals, I remember now. I read about it on the airstrip with Brent a little while back. Isn't that fantastic? Watching us as excitedly as we're watching them. That's a young one. I don't think it's an adult, and I think there's probably 2 or 3 siblings with a mother. Haven't yet gone totally independent. Listen to the birds in the background. Ringneck dove and this just gorgeous late afternoon light. Marvellous stuff. The airstrip is just down here. I would be so excited to see those jackal pups. There are 2 aeroplanes on the strip. Hello, B. Buey in Long Island. This is a lovely question, and I'd be fascinated to know where it comes from and how you know about them. Cane rats. You want to know about cane rats? Do we get them here? The answer is yes, we do get them here. And you want to know if they're introduced vermin? No, not at all. They are not introduced at all. They occur here quite naturally, and they're not actually. They're pretty scarce. There are not many of them around. So yes, we do see them from time to time. I don't think I've actually seen any here. I think Steph's found a nesting site, a sort of warren of burrows, but I've never seen them here. I've only seen them 3 or 4 times in my life, but they are around. They're nocturnal generally, and so we don't often see them. But I'd be fascinated to know, Buey, why it is that, or where you've even heard of them, because they're not a kind of popular animal. They're rodents. They're not vermin, but a bit like the bushveld gerbil, they're kind of overlooked in the bushveld out here. There are some impala and some warthog, which almost precludes the presence of jackals at the moment, but those jackals must be around here. If the pups were born here, I'd be astounded if they had moved off already. Anyway, with any luck. And don't forget, of course, you can be bidding on my hat. I think the bidding stands at $261 at the moment. The proceeds will be given to a charity out here. We have yet to identify the charity, but I'm going to talk to Michael Grover fairly soon. And he works a lot in the communities outside the reserve, and he'll have a good idea of who the proceeds of my hat should be donated to. There is a big kudu. Do you see any jackals? I don't see any jagalas, but we'll go down the southern end as well. Oh, let's quickly go across to Jamie. She's got a very slow reptile with her.
You've got to look both ways before you cross out here. You might encounter a very dome-shaped leopard tortoise in the process of moving across the road. He is now scuttling away from me at high speed. Look at him go. Positively cheetah-esque in his speed. But you can see this one's particularly vividly colored. You can really get an idea of why they are called a leopard tortoise, except when they hide there behind trees. When they hide behind trees, it's a bit harder to see. Come on, you can do it. No, he's decided that if I can't see him there, then it's the perfect spot to be. He's just coming out now. I'll go forward a little bit. Actually, we might get a better view of his head from here. But there you go. That yellow and black spotted pattern. This one has a particularly large amount of black on him. Definitely more black than yellow. And he's probably, I would say, in the region of 10 years old, maybe a little bit older. Bulldozing his way through the obstacles in front of him. It's been such a pleasure to see as many tortoises as we have recently. After all of the rain that we received, it was just a nice little sign that the rain hadn't arrived too late. And this little guy may well have been on the move in the search for shade when we first encountered him, standing right in the middle of the road, in the little curve there, and he set off at high speed away from us. Quick little, since we have been focusing on this quite a bit, I'll pull over to the side and you can have a look at where his tracks went across. And they've come through very differently in this sand. Like a little tank has gone through. One set of tracks on each side and the gap of the shell in the middle. There you go, building up your track repertoire as we go along. We're still trying to make our way to Buffelshoek Dam. I keep getting distracted. One of the animals at Buffelshoek Dam that I'm almost guaranteed to encounter will be an Egyptian goose. But why wait when James has one to show you already?
Why wait indeed when there are Egyptian geese walking away from you? And of course Egyptian geese are particularly successful on Arethusa, not so much on Djuma. The parents of the Egyptian geese at the Buffelshoek Dam, where Jamie is now on her way, lost all 7 of their little youngsters earlier this year. One by one they were picked off, probably by marabou storks and possibly the odd other kind of raptor, like a little sparrowhawk or something like that. These guys seem to do very well. So that'll probably be an adult pair and then some last remaining chicks who are about to go independent. They're not very brave. They were in the water when we came here and now there aren't anymore. There are also 3 kinds of plovers that we have here, or 3 kinds of lapwings. You've got over there, I'm not sure if we can actually see any of them anymore. There is a crowned lapwing. Very nice, well done. We've also got a blacksmith lapwing somewhere around here. I will find one for you, but in the meantime there's a Senegal lapwing off to the left-hand side, over there. That is a Senegal lapwing. They all like to live in these open areas where they chase around things to eat. See, they move slightly more daintily than the crowned lapwing. And interestingly, they don't have a back toe. So you were looking at the tracks of those francolins, which would be roughly the same size as the tracks of these lapwings. But with a francolin, of course, they do have a rear toe because they do fly quite a lot and they don't hunt too much while they're running. But these chaps run after their prey, and that's why they don't have a back toe. So let's go back to another back-toed francolin with Jamie.
Perfect timing. We've got this stunning view of a male coqui francolin.
Andrew.
Oops. Just doing, and you can hear the response from another male coqui a bit further away. Such a wonderful opportunity to watch the bird calling. Seeing a bird doing the call is the best way to learn bird calls. Let's see if maybe he'll do the other part of his call. Oh, he's going to call again. It's getting to the end of the day, so he's doing his sunset chorus, letting all the males know that this is his place, and letting all the ladies know that he is here. The coqui being the only species with that, of at least in this particular area, of francolin or spurfowl with that bright orange head. Oh, and he's feeling particularly vocal this evening. Looking really lovely in the afternoon light against the green. He's so enthusiastic about it. You could hear that grey hornbill in the distance. I was really hoping he might demonstrate the other part of his call, which is the coqui, 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 coqui. But at the moment he seems to be stuck on this particular part. Not sure what he's saying there. And you'll find that forever after, even if we're sitting in a lion sighting with lions sleeping next to us and you hear this sound, you will forever associate it with this call, or with this bird. Now, I mentioned that there were other responses to this bird calling, and Andreen was wondering how I know the other one responding to him is a male. And the answer is I don't really. Both the males and the females do call, and they do make that particular call, Andreen. So it's a valid point. I'm guessing they are, just because the males tend to make these particularly loud calls in coqui francolins more frequently than the females. That being said, you've opened up a good opportunity to just talk about the difference between the males and the females in coqui francolin. I know that's not specifically what you were asking, but it is just a sort of a nice lead in. If we were to see the female, you can actually really clearly see the difference. There's the male with his orange head. They describe it in this book as buff. I think I would describe that pretty much as orange. And the female completely different with the broad white eye stripes. That prominent spur. And just because we were talking about the Natal spur fowl and the fact that I was trying to have a look at the spur on the back of his legs. Right, let's go over to James, who has found another little creature for you to look at.
Here are some zebras, everybody. And some impalas. They're the most obvious things that we have there. But there are some zebras in the bushes that I don't wish to frighten off. There. Just see them lurking in the bush there, walking off, unfortunately to the south of where we're allowed to go. Obviously. No jackal on the airstrip, so I'm very interested as to where they were. And were they side-striped jackals or black-backed jackals? Is what I would like to know, because the side-striped tend to be a lot less confiding, much more likely to kind of move off. And so, yes, they were indeed side-striped. And so I'm not that surprised that they're not there anymore. If they'd been black-backed, much more territorial and much more likely to occupy a clearing for a lengthy period. Lovely golden light on that zebra, and you can see them too enjoying the grass. Bad-tempered, kicking a stick because he tripped over it. And you can see everything's being worried by the flies. Many, many flies have exploded into existence as a result, I think, of the rain. He just looks irritated, doesn't he, with his ears pinned back. And again, you can see how that colour, that black and white colour, although obvious when they're in the foreground, it really does break up the outline of the animal really nicely. And I think that's precisely why they have stripes. There you can just see that little black and white stripe. The impala looking at us through the bush there. Here it comes. Now, not to put too fine a point on it, if you look between his back legs, what you can see is that his scrotum has dropped and his neck has got much bigger, and that's because they're about to fight. And their testosterone levels, and he's horning that tree, you can see that. He's becoming territorial. Their testosterone levels are now going through the roof. They're going to fight with each other, show how big and strong they are. It's like I said yesterday to somebody, it's like they've had a huge shot of anabolic steroids. They're getting bigger, more muscular, and that's resulted in all what we call these secondary sexual characteristics. Now, while we watch that impala horn his tree, Wayne, you want to know about whether impala act like white-tailed deer. White-tailed deer, you say, pick their tails up when they're alarmed and when they run away. Do impala do the same? They do, but not as obviously as something like a kudu does. A kudu definitely flicks its tail up and has a brilliant flash of white. So they do exactly the same as the white-tailed deer. This is brilliant. This is incredible. So this is territorial behavior. It's not simply that his horns are itchy. He's leaving his scent on the tree. And also probably trying to demonstrate to the other males around the place that he's a tough guy. Does he look tough to you, Brian?
Very tough.
Very tough.
He's showing that tree who's boss.
He's showing that tree who's boss. That silver cluster leaf is being owned. The other male is very sensibly stocking up on resources for the real serious business end of the rut, which is the beginning of May. He's not worrying about horning trees at the beginning of April. Every so often he stops, you see, and he looks at his mate in front of him as if to say, well, do you see how strong I am? His mate, of course, just carries on eating. There you can see that very dropped scrotum that's not there all the time. It's only because the testosterone levels are so high now. And it's a really clever strategy, that, of course, because in the winter time, or when they're not rutting, when they're not mating, to maintain a scrotum like that, of course, it's expensive. Lots of nutrients go into a completely wasteful set of equipment, and so it makes a huge amount of sense for it to kind of atrophy for the remainder of the year. And in animals where either the estrus cycle is hidden from the males, so males and females, males never know when a female is receptive or not, human beings being a prime example of that, that obviously can't be the case. But in seasonal breeders like impala, it can be. He's going to get himself horribly tangled up there. A very interesting question from Sharon, brilliant question in fact. Protein. Now protein, you say it's an important macronutrient, indeed it is, and how, you say, do the herbivores get sufficient protein? Sharon, with difficulty, and one of the main ways they do it, of course, is to select for grasses that are high in protein. So I picked a few grasses today and describing them as either poor or good grazing grasses, and that's often got to do with the amount of protein that they have. Browsers tend to have a slightly easier time of it because although their food tends to have a lot more in the way of toxins, they tend to be slightly more protein rich. But the main way, Sharon, is through the digestion systems that they have. So a ruminant re-chews his food. Look how thick that impala's neck is. And that's purely a secondary sexual characteristic. So the ruminants which regurgitate their food, re-chew it and then swallow it and digest it through those complex arrangement of 4 stomachs, that is how they extract the protein that they need from the food. It's also why they eat so much more mass-wise than do, say, the carnivores. Very good question. But protein absolutely is the limiting macronutrient for a herbivore. And if you look at something like a lion or a leopard, obviously they don't eat carbohydrates at all. It's entirely, their energy requirements are produced from the expensive process of either digesting protein and processing it into energy, or from fat. And that's a much more efficient way of creating energy, but it's also why the carnivores do so much more sleeping than the herbivores do. That's a wonderful question, thank you. So, very nice question. Bethany, you say, would impala have sensation in their horns? Because I said they were itchy. I think to a certain extent. I don't think that they are as numb as, say, well, I don't know, what would be numb? I'm pretty sure they do have sensation because it is part of the skull. There is a network of veins and nerves that go up into the horns. So I do think they have sensation. I think the closer to the skull you get, the more sensation there probably is. But I don't think it's the same, they probably don't feel the same sensation as they would in other parts of their bodies. But definitely I think they do feel it. You often see buffalo scratching their horns, often just on trees, sometimes with their feet, and so I think they itch tremendously. I wonder if something like a rhino feels it. A rhino doesn't have any kind of nerve endings. That's not part of the skull. I don't think it has any blood vessels in the horn. So you'll probably find that a rhino's horn is almost without sensation. Of course, if you look at something like the beak on a bird, which in many respects is like a horn because it is part of the skull, so it's got bone in it, and then it's got keratin over the top, which is very similar to what a horn is. A beak is very sensitive on a bird, otherwise it wouldn't be able to so accurately pick up things and accurately preen its feathers with the beak that it has. So I see no reason why the horns shouldn't have a similar level of feeling in them. But they are, of course, used for fighting. You don't want to be too sensitive if you're fighting, otherwise you run away and don't sort of seek out the conflict that is required if you want to mate. The sun is about to disappear over the western horizon. Brian, will you show us the sun? Oh, you're losing it as we're going through this drainage line. I'll go up the other side and then show it to you. Now, my plan now is to head basically towards where those two mating leopards were earlier today, see if they haven't popped across the boundary, and maybe we can spend the last bit of drive with them. That would be very special indeed. Oh, there's the last bit of the sun. We are quite low down over here. Hello, Kerry on YouTube. One of your questions I can definitely answer. The second one I cannot. Your question is, do I have a favorite time of day? Yes, I do. I think the early morning is my favorite time of day. That very quiet time just before the dawn. That is my favorite time of the day. I mean, I love this time of the day too, but that is my favorite. And then favorite time of year, difficult to say. This time of year is great because the temperature's dropped a bit. It's nice the whole day through. It's not too cold at night. And I think probably this time and then the springtime as well. Sort of October, November into December would be my favorite times of the year out here. But if you're ever visiting, there's no bad time of year to visit. It's always nice. All right, let's think across to Jamie. She's got some dwarf mongoose for you.
All is quiet at Buffelshoek Dam, apart from one or two odd buffalo. But most exciting is this family of dwarf mongoose. Oh, somebody was having a good nibble there on the right. And they really are never cease to amaze me at how fascinating they truly are. Scuttle, scuttle, scuttle. Going back towards the rest of the group that are hiding at the base of this leadwood tree. In those holes there. Oh, I can't see any more of them. That's where most of them were when I came around the corner. There goes one into the tunnel. Oh, there's some heads popping out at the back there as well. Dwarf mongoose, of course, experts at utilizing old termite mound entrances and vents that they then turn into a suitable home. What is this one on the left doing? Sniffing for something. Could well be smelling the anal pastes of the rest of the group. Very interested in that particular branch. Yep, there we go. Now anal pasting on top of that scent mark. Now the other one's going to do the same thing. When last did you see a mongoose anal paste like that? Up on its back, right up on its back legs. Oh, there we go again. Very acrobatic. Now, is the second one going to do the same thing? That's a good question. Or is it something demonstrated by the more high-ranking members of the group? Are you going to... Nope, you're not going to do the same handstand combined with the quick anal paste motion. Are the others? Because they're all sniffing there as well. I wonder if they've only just moved into this particular burrow, or moved back into this particular burrow, and are now finding good places to scent mark. Yes, I'm talking about you. Another one having a good sniff. So far, only one of them has responded to that scent by anal pasting. This one showing a little bit more interest. And that was my suggestion about the possibility that it was a higher ranking member of the group that anal pastes. I don't think so, however. I think that it's more likely to be all of them, just like all hyena members of a hyena clan anal paste. And time to move on, making use of the last few moments of light to forage before deciding where to settle down for the evening. I mentioned the hierarchy within dwarf mongoose families. They have an alpha female and an alpha male. And only those two will breed. They account for about 80% of the births that will happen within a mongoose family. Every now and again, a sub-ranking female does have youngsters, but a lot of the time those little ones do not survive. Actually very similar social structure to the wild dogs in that respect. And that's because the alpha will make sure, first of all, that her babies get the best access to food, her offspring, and sometimes even actively sets out to kill the offspring that have been born to a lower-ranking female. Now, when it comes time to determine who gets the higher rank, instead of fighting it out viciously, as most animals tend to do, the dwarf mongoose have a very different approach, and that is to groom each other until they simply cannot groom anymore. So lick and clean until they cannot continue, and you've got two individuals coated with saliva and sitting panting, exhausted and dehydrated. Basically choosing a new leader through love rather than hate. I think they've moved off into thick vegetation. That was the first time, and this is going to sound really strange, I was almost tempted to go and sniff that branch that was marked, but I don't think I'm going to. Just to get an idea of the different smells and learn about the different smells in this area and what each different smell means. But that is the first time I've ever managed to capture a dwarf mongoose scent marking on a branch. And Deborah was saying this is the first time that she's ever seen this. Deborah, of course, being our self-proclaimed armchair traveler and one of our very regular viewers. She was wondering if perhaps, or whether or not all mongoose species do it, or it's just the dwarf mongoose, because she said that she's never seen them do that before. And the answer is all mongoose are capable of anal pasting like that. Some might be less inclined to do it than others. Some don't necessarily live in set burrows in the same way that little families or businesses of dwarf mongoose do. So, for example, the yellow mongoose spends a lot of its time above ground, much bigger, much stockier mongoose, not one that we see here. I wonder what startled those Franklin. I'm not investigating just because I think that they were busy having an argument with each other. So Deborah, all mongoose are capable of doing it. Genets are capable. Honey badgers are capable of doing it, and civets are as well. It's one of the reasons why we speak about the evolutionary connection between, often we speak about the relationship between the hyenas and the cat family. They also have a physical similarity to members of the mongoose and the badger family, and that is that anal gland. You might have found that that mongoose was also urinating at the same time on that branch. I'm not entirely sure that it was just anal pasting, but I'm fairly certain that it was, and the reason I say that was just the way that it had positioned its tail above the anal gland. So they all have them, and they all will anal paste, but they might be for different areas. Some might mark out territorial boundaries, whilst others are marking the burrows themselves as a message to others. I just found it very interesting that only one of them in that particular situation did it. Obviously, others had come before and anal pasted there. You could see by the interest that they were all showing in it. But it was interesting that it was just the one. I'm slowly making my way back to the area where those alarm calls were coming from, just in case those Inyala were not, just in case those mongoose were not actually crying leopard and that there was something there. Now, just on the subject with our dwarf mongoose, just on the subject of the relationship of the animals, of the different animal species with each other, George was wondering whether or not dwarf mongoose are in any way, or mongoose are in any way related to otters. And I can very much see what you mean in terms of body shape. That was probably a little bit too much to ask. I was going to try and get that puffback shrike on camera, but it dashed off very quickly. So George, you were wondering otters and mongoose. I can see the similarities that you mean. However, they are if they are related, it is via a very distant ancestor. They are a completely separate branch, and I'm trying to think which family the otters fall under, and whether or not it's connected to, for example, the honey badger or the mustelids family, but not as far as I know. I think they are completely separate in their classification, but I'll double check that for you, George. I'll just have a check and see. I've got books on the evolutionary relationship between the different animal species. Now that is an animal that we would get exceptionally excited if we ever saw here. Of course, not really a possibility. We're not around a river system, but they do occur in the Sabi Sands, and they do occur in the Kruger Park. We get the Cape clawless otter. They are fascinating little creatures. I went to go back to visit, while I was on leave, I went to go back to visit a very close friend of mine who happens to be mommy number 2 to our dog. This is just very pretty. I thought I'd stop for the view since we are here. I went to go back to visit her, and it was a reserve where an otter had been rehomed from a place known as Free in Johannesburg, which is a rescue organization. And this otter had been brought to the reserve and released into one of the river systems. But because it has been hand reared, it actually turned quite terrifying. And eventually they had to, when I went there, I conducted a walk for some of the guests, and I was told emphatically that I was not to walk anywhere near this otter, and that if I saw it coming, I was to turn around and escape as quickly as possible. At that point, they were more frightened of the otter than they were of the lions on the reserve moving through the area. It just goes to show. Otter's still fine, perfectly happy, living completely on its own. I'm on my way back towards our Nyala Road South area where I heard those alarm calls. We do have this beautiful view of the sun. It seems as though James has got one too.
Hello everybody, we're just looking at the sunset as you were with Jamie Patterson. And this of course is a wonderful way to close the day. Well, not that we're going to close just yet, simply because this is how Brian and I began the day, with the sun coming up exactly 180 degrees from where it sits now. Now, while you watch that decidedly delightful red orb sink down beneath the back of the dragon, aka the Drakensberg Mountains, news on the wireless is that there are 3 leopards, not here unfortunately, south of us: Tingana, tundi and an unidentified female, possibly Karula, just watching what they're doing, because she is sometimes in attendance when leopards are mating in her territory. But he is mating with one of them at least, and they are south of us. So we're now in the southern areas, quite close to Treehouse Dam. We're going to stick around here, I think, for the remainder of the drive, and with any luck, they'll come north and we'll be able to see them. Unfortunately, just not possible at the moment. We just wait for the sun to touch the edge of the mountains there. Isn't that wonderful? It's almost post-apocalyptic, isn't it, Brian?
Yeah.
Like a scene from Mad Max, without the noisy vehicles and Charlize Theron. The latter, of course, we are not sad about. At least the former we're not sad about. It would not be entirely sad if Charlize Theron was joining us on safari. Of course, a resident of Benoni, otherwise known as Benowhere.
Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, it's not a salubrious part of town. There we go. Sinking down below the Drakensberg. Always, as the sun touches the horizon, the wind starts to come up. It does amaze me, that. I'm not really sure why it happens. So if you would like us to stay here and watch the rest of the sun go down, I'm more than happy to do that. Brian, what do you think?
I would love to.
Would you? All right. Well, in the absence of any other kind of feedback from anyone, I think we'll do just that. Let's wait for the sun to go down. It should take roughly, I think it's 3 minutes, isn't it, or 4 minutes?
Yeah.
Maybe even less. This one is going to take less than that. It's almost halfway down already. And the clouds above it, all around, you could leave it like that if you want, Brian. We'll show the clouds as it sinks. But there's some beautiful wispy clouds, what's commonly known as the mare's mane, I think. Cirrus clouds, that's right, that's the kind of English word term for them. And thank you all for your screenshots of this magnificent sunset. I know some people, very few that I know, but some get a little sick and tired of sunsets all the time. I just love them. I can't help but stop and enjoy them every time I see them. Same with the sunrise. It's almost gone already. And now you'll have a look at these magnificent Sirius clouds up in the blue sky. Look at that. It's like a roof of gentle silk. Obviously quite indicative of a very strong wind up there. Almost gone. Oh, the last molten ember of the day. And gone. Well done, Brian.
Marvellous.
Did you think that is a quite nice rounding off of our day? We should probably just call it quits right now. Stunning. Okay. Let's go to Treehouse Dam and see what's going on there. We will keep watching the radio just to see if those leopards don't head north of the boundary. Oh, the other interesting thing, of course, is that Shadow's got her den over there, sort of on the Triple M road, which is a stupid place to have it, in much the same way that Karula had her den on a main road. But she left the cubs earlier and came east this way. It's about 300 meters or so, 1,000 feet, exactly in that direction to where her den is. I'm not going to go and put pressure on that area, but we'll just keep an eye out here and see if she doesn't pop out so that we can sort of shake her paw and say, well done, my girl, for producing some youngsters. That would be a very special treat indeed. So she's probably hunting. There are some impala in here, which are hopefully going to be facing the opposite way when she arrives, simply because we want her to eat, given that she's got hungry mouths to feed. I think actually what we'll do is we'll drive all the way up this road here, and then we'll come back towards Treehouse Dam, and we'll keep an eye out on the radio. I'm going to keep the radio on the, what we call the eastern channel, and that will tell me if the Tingana and the others come north. So all these leopards are concentrated in a very small area at the moment, less than, what would we say, probably about 100 hectares, less than 250 acres. So kind of at the confluence of all sorts of territories out here. Stations, please keep us posted if any of those animals come north. I'm going to stay on this channel. Hopefully they will. Nothing has come down this road since I came down it at about 11 o'clock today. And my pleasure, everybody, for the sunset. Of course, it wasn't so much me as it was the universe. Oh no. Oh dear. This is terrible news. This is a terrible, terrible tragedy, everybody. Hang on a second. Pinchy Whiner has gone AWOL. I can't believe this. A buffalo has sat in the mud here and destroyed the crab's home. Now, this is where the only crab we've ever seen on Djuma lived. And Mark Weiner found it a long time ago, and I think for many years it survived here. And just before Scott left, we said, well, you've got to name the crab. And he named it Pinchy for its pincers, and then it gave it the surname Weiner after Mark, which I thought was very appropriate. So Pinchy Weiner used to live in a little hole here. I'm just going to see if I can uncover where it was. But this is really sad. He made it through such tough times. He made it through the drought, and he lived in a little hole right where my hands are now. And it's gone. Oh, this is dreadful. I feel genuinely bereft. It's, maybe it was in here. No, I don't know.
What about that other hole there?
Which one?
There by your left foot.
My left foot. Here.
Yeah.
No, this is a buffalo track.
Oh, no.
No, it was in there. That's where it was. Well, the interesting thing about Pinchy Weiner, of course, is that he had a potential lifespan of more than 10 years. How long he'd been in this puddle, I don't know. Maybe he's moved off to somewhere else. I hope he has. It would be very sad if Pinchy Weiner had come to and has met his end by now. I love that name. I think it is just too wonderful. Yes. Whenever I drive past here, of course, I now remember Scott and Mark. And you saw him, James Richard, you say you saw him swimming around with Brent recently. Well, probably not with Brent, but Brent was probably filming him. I doubt he was swimming with Brent, although with Leo Smith, nothing is impossible. But no more Pinchy Weiner in that hole. Very sad day. We'll pretend that he's moved on to fairer climes rather than being buried in his own burrow by a buffalo who just happened to lie down there, squashing its fat bulk against the muddy side of that hole. I shall have to get hold of Scott immediately and tell him that Pinchy Weiner is pretty soft. I don't know if Mark knows the crab was named after him. But certainly Mark is a phenomenal naturalist and managed to find him in that hole. Freshwater crab, many different species, but they are particularly long-lived. That's why they're particularly interesting, I think. Anyway, we'll have a moment's silence, I think, for Pinchy Weiner. Patricia, you say you don't think you've ever seen me as upset as this. Well, Patricia, it is a somber time now. Fate of Pinchy Weiner unknown. A very good question. I hope that he will, or maybe he has. You say, won't he just dig his way out if the hole is just buried? Yes, he might. And of course, a crustacean doesn't have the same energy requirements as we do. They don't have to maintain. They don't have to maintain the same kind of body temperature, and so they can go dormant for a long time. And I suspect that he's been dormant for much of his time because, of course, his pathetic little puddle, which is a ridiculous place for a crab to live, is dry most of the time. So, yeah, no, he may well be able to dig his way out. It'd be so wonderful to come along there tomorrow and find that his hole, his little cave, had been reopened. I'd be tempted to pour a bottle of water into his hole just to say, well done, old Pinchy, my boy. Good old Pinchy. I'm still listening to the radio, but I don't hear anything happening. I'll get an update for now, and while I do that, let's head across to Jamie and get an update from her.
I've got really, really good news for you all, which is one of the reasons why I don't think I've ever done a Ferrari safari for this, but I'm doing one now, and that is to get to the active hyena den that has been found, drum roll, exactly where we left them. Exactly in the same place, exactly in the same den. They are right back there. They have not moved. I'm not sure if that's just because they've moved from a den to a den around Aubrey's Road and they've just decided that tonight that's where they want to be. But I don't want to take the risk of them being gone tomorrow. And the light is very rapidly fading on us. And of course we can't put lights on at the den. So I'm doing something of a Ferrari safari to get you to the hyena den. Not a huge Ferrari safari, a mild Ferrari safari. I'm not even sure I'm going to make it. But I just thought after our prolonged absence from our favorite spotted hyenas, might be worth just trying our best to get across that side. And that combined with the update about Tingana and Tundi with a third unidentified leopard that is most likely Karula has also made me abandon my search for whatever it was that the Nyala were shouting at in the drainage line. I guess they just made it, maybe they were super embarrassed as well. Maybe they thought it was a leopard, but it was actually a bushbuck, and now they're sitting behind a bush going, well, that was embarrassing. Hopefully, because they definitely led me to my hopes up and then dashed dreams and disappointment. But I'm thoroughly comforted in the knowledge that our hyenas have not abandoned us yet. I was starting to wonder where on earth we would start searching for get their whole thumbs while I do. James is having something of an elephant-themed day.
So some nice elephants we have here, actually. There is one. There was a little one just in the bush there showing his face to us. He was wonderful. He's run off. I think this is the little herd of the 2/3 trunk female. Yeah, this is the two slightly older ones. There she is with her missing trunk. Oh, no, it's not. It's a different herd entirely. That's very nice. Just look at the colour there of that grey with the green. And look at the blowing wind just as the sun's gone down, and those clouds in the sky there are indicative of a front coming in, so maybe there is a front coming in. Ooh, there's an elephant breaking something up ahead. Let's go a bit forward. Oh, JD, this is quite a difficult question. I will stop and answer it now. I just want to see, there seem to be sounds of others just up ahead here. Maybe still to cross the road. Here we go. JD, you want to know about whether elephants will leave or abandon sick or deformed animals. The short answer is no. The long answer is sometimes. This is a young bull who's trying to keep up with the herd. And I'll explain that to you now, JD. Elephants will, for as long as possible, keep up with, allow young animals or sick animals to keep up with them. And when that becomes impossible, they may then abandon them. And that was very clearly illustrated once at Londolozi, where there was a 4 or 5 year old, very badly deformed elephant called Elvina. Was originally Elvis because they thought it was a male. This is a young bull. I may just have to tap the vehicle quickly just to make him not come too close to us. But he's a young bull. If he was a very big adult, I wouldn't be this close to him. I'll get back to you now, Jay. He's just quite close. He's about, only about 10 feet, trying to smell us, eating grass. He's wonderful, isn't he? Isn't he lovely? He's coming very close now. I may start the engine just now, everybody. He's not very old. So that's why I'm prepared to sit this close to him. He's only about 3 feet from us now. There we go. He's probably about 18 or 19, maybe 20. He's not angry with us at all. You can see there how close he is. So we're just going to sit here quietly. If you can't hear me, I'm sorry. I am speaking quietly simply because he is so close. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, he's a lovely breed. No, boy, come on. There we go. Isn't that cool? That's such fun. So, I mean, wonderful, just sort of dovetail or finish to that story we were talking about. We were talking about the Safari Live story that we told about the hole-in-the-ear elephant that Brent very nicely concluded for us and put out a few days ago, and how that elephant got a lot closer. Well, I mean, this one was standing, what, Brian, 2 feet from us at one stage? And did you feel any sense of threat?
Nope.
He's just not putting out that vibe. He's putting out a vibe of, oh, I'm just going to have a quick look at what you're doing. And he's not old. He's not a big adult male bull. Well, of course he's a male bull, but he's not a big adult like that other hole-in-the-ear bull. And so I didn't feel at any stage like he was A, going to touch us, or B, that there was any threat. I must confess, I felt no threat from him at all. And elephants are very good at, if they are feeling uncomfortable, they're very good at showing you that, and they're very good at transferring some kind of, I don't know, some people would call it an energy, other people would say that was nonsense. But you definitely get a vibe from them. And as Brian said, just no sense of threat from that elephant whatsoever. He was 2 feet from us. Just a wonderful, wonderful sighting. Okay, on we go. Brilliant. I'm going to put a few lights on now. It's starting to get a bit darker. A very good question from Alice in Ohio. How did the elephant's ears get so tattered? Well, rather like my hat, probably through wear and tear. So the ears will, if they're running through bush, they'll sometimes get them caught. But those ones were particularly tattered. And I wonder if he wasn't attacked maybe as a youngster, maybe a lion or a hyena took a chunk out of an ear, because that seemed to be one particular area where it had been ripped. And I think for a thorn to have done that, that would have been unusual. So I am guessing that it happened to him as a youngster. Just wonderful. It always leaves me feeling so happy after a sighting like that. Robin in Maryland, you say he seemed to be limping. No, I don't think so, Robin. I think he was walking fine. Elephants can sometimes look a bit limpy if the ground is uneven. because they're not, well, they don't appear to be that agile. And so I think that's all that was, Robert. Beautiful. And Jerry reckons his hip was dislocated. I can say categorically that that is definitely not the case. I think if his hip was dislocated, he'd be totally unable to move. Remember, if a joint is dislocated, it's a ball and socket joint, the hip joint, and if the hip comes out, it can't articulate anymore. It can't move properly. And so he really would be in a lot of discomfort. It might be injured. It could well be injured. I mean, we didn't see him walk a huge amount, but I don't think that it's dislocated. It'd be very interesting to see again, though, now that that's been pointed out. But I'm 99% sure he's not dislocated. It's like if your shoulder's well, no, your shoulder's not a ball and socket so much, but your hip is. And if your hip gets dislocated, the ability to actually walk at all disappears. So let's head down now towards Treehouse Dam and the southern, in fact, let's go straight onto the southern boundary and see if there isn't any action coming across this way. Treehouse Dam has been, I don't know, decidedly short on action, I find, despite the fact that it's now got water. And it's amazing how they've turned, all the dams here have turned from fairly unattractive dust bowls, which is what they look like when they don't have water in them, to lovely little focal points of the game drive where we go from waterhole to waterhole to see what's going on there. You can see the light has dropped now, and we're almost into spotlight territory, which is always a slightly nerve-wracking time for me. Not very good with the spotlight. And while I'm getting used to the spotlight, Jamie is wonderfully at the hyena den.
I'm quite bitterly disappointed after all of that. It was active earlier. There was a report from one of the other guides to say that the hyena cubs were out and about. And I raced here in the hope that we would get here before it got too dark. But there's nobody home. That's terribly disappointing. There's lots and lots of fresh tracks though, and I could see where the vehicle tracks came in, so we're in the right place. We just missed out. Maybe the hyenas, maybe the adults have been off elsewhere over the last few days, occupied elsewhere, and they've only been returning back briefly to feed before moving off. Maybe they've just decided that they don't want to be on camera anymore, or at least they want a break from camera. Maybe they've gone on leave. Oh well, it was totally worth it, I guess, for the chance of seeing them once again, but it doesn't seem as though there's any action here at the hyena den, so I guess we will just be carrying on with our drive. Since I'm here, I might as well head across to Sydney's, see if there's any chance of that Birmingham boy making an appearance back in that direction. Hyenas? Nope. I must say, I didn't expect that. I'm so disappointed. I really thought that they would be here, but oh well. Next time, tomorrow morning we'll start here and we'll see if they don't come out to play. Just dodging the stump that I smacked in my haste to get here. No, there's not a sound. There's not a hyena anywhere. Apparently there's some talk of late April Fool's jokes. I promise you, I really, really, really thought they'd be here. Oh well, next time. Sorry, you're gonna have to forgive me. I've got to untangle myself here for a second. 2 radios and 1 spotlight occasionally equals entanglement. And Liam, whenever you can, please, if you could do my headlights as well. That would be fantastic. Well, let's check along the Buffelshoek boundary then. See if we don't spot any of the adults returning to the den site. At least they're still here. At least they haven't moved across to Buffelshoek. So the property to the north of where we are now and to the north of our traverse area. That at least is of small comfort to us. Actually enormous comfort to us. I was quite devastated by the idea that they might have moved on to Buffelshoek and that we wouldn't be seeing them for another few weeks before they decided to come back. It is amazing how attached we have been, or at least I have become, to the different characters of the hyena den. Said that you guys are not too disappointed because at least we know where they are and that they will show themselves eventually when the time is right. It's a good way of looking at things, Valeria. I definitely feel better than I did after my failed search yesterday for the hyenas. It's good to know that at least they are out and about and that they are still there. We just have to wait our chance to get to see them. And I'm not being there as soon as it's light enough tomorrow morning. Depending, of course, on what happens during the evening. I could drive out and there could be a leopard in the middle of quarantine. But barring anything unforeseen, towards the dam, just in case we do lose some signal there. But often along sandy patches that has to offer. It's one of my favorite times to be out. It is such an exciting. The sky is just breathtaking. The colors are stunning. The very, very exciting prospect of the various nocturnal animals coming out to play. What nocturnal animal shall we find tonight, Liam?
Serval.
You want a serval again? Liam wants a serval. Liam was with me when we found that serval the other night. I'm just sort of feeling porcupine would be really nice. I've been feeling that for the last few nights, like I would really like to see a porcupine.
Or leopard.
Or a leopard. Okay, Liam. Liam likes his cats. There is an animal that I would absolutely fall over myself if I saw. It's a question from Bev in Durban. She was wondering if we ever get hedgehogs here. Very, very unlikely, Bev. They don't really extend all the way up to the Sabi Sands. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Bev, but you do occasionally find hedgehogs in the wild around Natal. I have heard that before. I personally have never ever seen a wild hedgehog. Now, we do get hedgehogs in Africa, and they look very similar to the ones that you would be familiar with if you're from the States or if you're from the UK or Europe. It's totally the same animal, basically. But no, I've never seen one out here. Now, that is something that I would be, first of all, exceptionally surprised to see, but also incredibly excited. There's a very slight possibility of it. I must actually ask some of the other guides who have spent a longer time in this particular part of the Lowveld. I was in a slightly different environment for the last few years, so this is my first time living and working in the Sabi Sands. And I'll ask them if they've ever had sighting of hedgehogs. It sounds very, very unlikely to me. But also a little nocturnal creature that would be fantastically exciting. We're we're doing at the moment, of course, with our spotlight is looking for any of the eye shine. Okay. Thank you to Raisa, who is answering my original question that came from one of our viewers. I think it was George, about the relationship between otters and honey badgers. And I mentioned the honey badger family Mustelidae, and I said I thought that they might be related, but quite distantly. And I was completely wrong. Raisa's corrected me. Thank you. They are actually all of them, the otters and the honey badgers, are in the family Mustelidae. Now, what's interesting about that is I didn't realize, well, I don't know much. I have to confess, I don't know all that much about otters. And I don't know whether or not they have the anal glands that honey badgers do, or if they are capable of secreting from them. That's interesting. That's a really interesting point. So thank you, Raisa. I learned something new today. It was ringing in the back of my mind somewhere. Oh! I thought you were a bird for a second, little bush baby. Now, these are always exciting things to find. Tiny, tiny little nochapi, as they're known in Afrikaans, which means little night monkey. A lesser galago, or a lesser bush baby. And this is awesome. Look how he's sticking around, looking at us. You can even see the slight glint to his eyes that we look for when we shine our spotlight. Hello, little one. Oh, look at him looking, using those really large ears to spot insects and other sources of food. Isn't he just adorable? Ooh, what's down there? Is there anything exciting down there? You can see those, you can even get to see those really flexible fingers of his. Oh, head to the side. He almost looks slightly out of it, but he's not. He's moving his ears and his head to pinpoint the direction of sounds. Here we go. Adjusting the posture or the angle of his head to listen. And that, of course, is why we have holes or ear holes on each side of our head. And believe it or not, it's slightly different heights. He's hilarious to watch. It's his way of determining the direction of sound. What's there, little one? Look at that long, long tail, more than the length of his body, to act as the perfect balancing instrument. This is so incredible. Bush babies during the day, when they're asleep, go into a state of torpor, which is a very, very energy efficient or energy saving sleep. Their metabolism slows right down. And it's only at night when they come out and are as alert as this one is. He was actually on the ground when I first spotted him, which was why it took my brain a while to register. Oh, are we off? Too cute. This has got to be one of the best bush baby sightings I've had. Daisy's Place has said this is her best bush baby sighting ever. We had a viewer called Amy. Oh, where did you go?
Right there on the right side of the frame.
There he is. Where's he gone? I might have to move forward a little bit. It's just a different angle from my perspective and from VM's perspective. We had a viewer, Amy, who really wanted to see a bush baby. And I struggled for about 3 or 4 days to get her one. Can you see him from there, VM?
A little bit.
Little bit. Amy, I really hope you are watching tonight, because this has definitely been by far one of my best bush baby sightings. Although now tucked away in the bush. Come on, little one. Now, this little one is on high alert, not just because it wants to find food, but also because of the number of threats that could be out here at night. And Cecilia was wondering, well, what kind of predators would a bush baby have? The answer is that one of their biggest predators would be an owl, a gymnogene or a harrier hawk. We saw a gymnogene or a harrier hawk take a baby squirrel out of its nest a couple of days ago, and they are equally capable of delving into bush baby nests, which tend to be very similar to squirrel nests. They're equally capable of pulling baby bush babies or adult bush babies out. Owls, as I said, snakes are also a threat, particularly arboreal or tree snakes. A leopard would be unlikely. A small cat like a caracal or a serval would be a definite possibility. Oh, quick clean of that tail, peering out at us through the leaves.
Saw a vervet catch.
Oh yes, I forgot about that story. Liam actually saw a vervet monkey catch a bush baby outside of his room and clasp it. And there's another incredible video that one of the viewers sent me recently, and I cannot remember for the life of me now what it was, but it was to do with a bush baby. I don't think it was a monkey. It was a bush baby catching something, I think. It was a little while ago, and so much has happened since. Yes, Liam had a really unusual sighting. I mean, that is unusual to see a bush baby being caught by a vervet monkey. I'm going to take a chance here. I'm going to take a chance and just idle forward ever so slightly, just to see if I can't get that branch out of Liam's way. It could go either way. It could also mean make it worse, but let's see. Okay, well, now we've got a leaf. But I think that's probably as good as it's going to get. The bush baby's turned around now. It's facing away from us. To give you a sense of scale, because I know it's very difficult to see it, he's still doing that very slow head movement. To give you a sense of scale as to how big this little thing is, its body size is probably about the size of a medium-sized rat.
Going mobile after Blizzard.
Which is not the most flattering comparison, although I quite like rats, but that's roughly how big it is. But with the tail's much longer than that of your average-sized rat. Another good clean. Weedy, who's watching in Washington, you were wondering if they are like sugar gliders. And in a way, yes, they are quite similar. A very similar shape and structure, although obviously without the gliding potential. But they occupy a very similar ecological niche in different places. The bush baby here, obviously, and the sugar glider elsewhere. But they do occupy that tiny little arboreal primate type niche where they will feed off or have quite flexible diets. What is this little thing doing? Just trying to see if it's going to... I thought it was catching something, but it isn't actually. It's just having a really thorough grooming. See how unconcerned it is with us. For any new viewers or newer viewers, this is a very, very unusual sighting. Usually when we have bush babies sitting still, it is right around the entrance to their nesting holes. Other than that, we get the briefest glimpse of them before they dash away. We really do not often get to see them washing their paws like this. This one's having a jolly good clean of its tail. Alice was wondering, just on the subject of the story that Liam told us with the vervet monkey that caught the bush baby. Alice wanted to know if the vervet monkey killed the bush baby. And Liam, if I remember correctly, you said no, it didn't.
Yeah, when they saw me, they dropped it and ran.
Ah, there we go. Liam saved the life of the hapless bush baby, even if it was slightly unintentional, but nevertheless, he is the hero of the bush baby world. And the monkeys, when they saw him, dropped the bush baby and moved off. And the bush baby was able to make an escape. Did it look sort of paralyzed with fright afterwards, or did it jump away immediately?
No, it motored.
And motored away. I suppose I would too. Ooh, very itchy nose. Another good scratch around the eye. Can't believe this. How patient this little bush baby has been with us. And I hear you all are taking amazing screenshots of our special little bush baby that's been so kind to allow us to spend time with it. Been incredibly entertaining to watch. This has definitely got to be one of the longest bush baby sightings of my entire life, actually. And just fascinating to watch the curiosity with which it's viewing the world around it. Looking up into the trees, looking all around it, looking down. Oh, and is it going to bounce? It looks like it's preparing to. No, another investigation of what's happening down below. And you can almost see, every time it turns its head and looks this way, the red-like reflection to the eyes. And that is unique to bush babies out here. To me, none of the other mammals give off that red reflection. What is it doing? Looked like it was going to move and then changed its mind. The only nocturnal primate out here, apart from the greater galligo or the much larger bush baby, turning in circles now, giving us a good thorough investigation. And as Liam zooms out, you can get an idea of just how tiny this little bush baby really is. Like it's disappeared. That was absolutely awesome. I really, really enjoyed that. Well, as always, thank you for joining us on the Sunset Safari. Thank you, Liam, for your fantastic camera work, as always. We are so lucky to have the talented cameramen that we do. Thank you, Kirsty and Jerry in Final Control. Most importantly, thank you to all of you, the viewers, for your questions and your comments and those little bits of those times where you actually send me through the solutions that I'm looking for as well. I really appreciate that. Hope you had a wonderful time, and we will catch up with you tomorrow morning, fingers crossed, with the hyenas on the Sunrise Safari. Cheers, everyone.
We have found nothing, I'm afraid, everybody. We did do the southern boundary, no sign of any of those three leopards coming across. I'm not that sad, simply because I think it might mean that they're going to come across in the morning when we can view them with some decent light. So that's it from us today. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Jim.
A most enjoyable day. Very nice news that the hyenas have been found again. Hopefully we'll actually see them at the den tomorrow. Big thanks to Kirsten on vocals in the Final Control. Jerry's back on keys today. Thank you, Cheesecake. And thanks to Jamie, of course, with the inimitable VM on the other vehicle. We will see you in the morning at 05:30. Stay happy wherever you are. Bye-bye.